Good morning. Welcome to the biochemistry. And here in today's class, we are discussing with the electrolytes and their imbalances. So we all knew what is an electrolyte. The electrolyte is an inorganic element present in the body fluids, which is most important for the providing osmotic pressure as well as they are required for the body homeostasis. These are the inorganic elements which are responsible to maintain your water balance in the extracellular fluid as well as intracellular fluids. Among them, the most important one will be the sodium. In the previous class, we already explained about the intracellular elements and extracellular elements. So coming to the extracellular element, this will be mainly achieved by a cation known as sodium, where it counts for the 136 to 145 milli equivalents in the extracellular fluid. So please blindly remember the thing, sodium is a major extracellular cation, and in the total body it will counts for the 4000 milli equivalents, and among these 4000 milli equivalents of sodium, 50% will be present in the bones, 40% will counts in the extracellular fluid, and 10% in the soft tissues. As already mentioned, the normal sodium of plasma value will be uh, counts between 136 to 145 milli equivalents per liter, and in the cells it only lies between 12 milli equivalents per liter. So the major sources of sodium will be by taking salts or water and by taking other dietary elements, especially by the sea origin elements. And a very important aspect, that is imbalance in plasma sodium level. There are two spectrums will be present. One will be hyponatremia and other will be hypernatremia. So we already mentioned emia stands for in blood, and na nat stands for sodium, and hypo stands for lower. So the hyponatremia tells us that sodium concentration in blood is low. So we already mentioned the normal concentration of sodium in the blood will be from 136 to 145. So here if the concentration of sodium will be less than 135 milli equivalents, then that condition is known as hyponatremia. And if the concentration of sodium falls less than 120, then it will be called as more severe and the symptoms will be more worst. So in the hyponatremia, I already mentioned the symptoms will be depends upon the concentration of sodium. It will stands with the decreased ability to think, headache, nausea, vomiting, and in the severe conditions, severe symptoms, confusion, seizures, and cerebral swelling will be seen. And the causes based upon the volume and sodium concentration. So based upon the uh, proportion of your volume of extracellular fluid and concentration of sodium, that will be known as high volume or hypervolumetric hyponatremia, and second one is normal volume known as euvolumetric hyponatremia, and next one is low volume, that is hypovolumetric hyponatremia. Here the extracellular fluid volume will be higher in the first stage, but sodium concentration will be low. In the second condition, the extracellular fluid volume is normal. Again, the sodium concentration is low. In next condition, both the extracellular fluid volume as well as sodium concentration both will be lower. And the fourth cause will be the miscellaneous causes that we'll see in the next slide. Next slide कैसे करना? Okay. So here I have uploaded a table where we are having the clear differentiation, causes, and what about the concentration of sodium in the urine. So let me first explain the causes, then we will go for the next slide. So in the first condition, where you have the concentration of water will be increases, but sodium content will be lower. So that is known as hypervolumetric and hyponatremia. Among these, the major causes are, they are more chronic. The causes are cirrhosis, congestive heart failure, nephrotic syndrome, and excessive drinking of fluids. Let me explain the causes in detail, starting with the cirrhosis of liver. So in cirrhosis of liver, the liver is unable to produce proper amount of albumin protein, which leads to retention of water from extracellular fluid into the intracellular fluid due to the inability to maintain the oncotic pressure. So that will leads to the edema, as well as it will causes the lower arterial volume or effects on the heart. So this lower arterial volume will in turn causes the secretion of antidiuretic hormone. This will causes more water retention, and this will leads to the more amount of water. And second element, so in the cirrhosis of liver, there is increased portal tension is noticed. This increased portal tension will indirectly lowers the arterial volume. So this lower arterial volume will be activates your thirst center and antidiuretic hormone, that more amount of water will be uptaken and causes more severe fatal condition. So in the case of congestive heart failure, again same aspect. In the congestive heart failure, the heart is unavailable to pump a proper amount of oxygen, where you will have the lower arterial blood flow. This lower arterial blood flow will activate thirst centers of your brain, as well as it will activates the antidiuretic hormone. By these two mechanism, more volume will be more volume of extracellular fluid will be taken. So in the hypervolumetric hyponatremia, the sodium content in urine will be lower. Please do remember, in high volume hyponatremia, the concentration of sodium will be lower. So this leads to the further symptoms like edema and dyspnea, cough, and swelling of upper limbs. And in the nephrotic syndrome, you will have the damage in the glomerulus of the kidney. This will causes lowering of the albumin concentration. The albumin will be not able to reabsorb completely, so it will leaks through the glomerulus, and it will causes water entry into the intestinal fluid, so ultimately the sodium concentration will be lower. And by last mechanism of excessive drinking of fluids, so this is directly increases volume, so the osmolality of sodium or other electrolytes will be decreases. So the points to remember is, in congestive heart failure there is low availability of oxygen, so it will increases the secretion of more ADH. So in cirrhosis, you will have the lower concentration of albumin and increased portal tension. This will be triggers ADH secretion. In nephrotic syndrome, there is no reabsorption of albumin, so there will be influx of more water. So ultimately, it will leads to the lower levels of sodium. And second one, normal volume and hyponatremia. In this condition, you will have the concentration of extracellular fluid in the normal range, but the sodium concentration will be lower. So as the concentration of water is normal, in this there is edema will not be seen, and the concentration of sodium in urine will be normal or high. There is a contrast between your hypovolumetric and hypovolumetric. Here the concentration in sodium may be normal or may be high, and this will be seen a condition known as, it is a purely new condition known as syndrome of inappropriate antidiuretic hormone. So here what happens is, a non-physiological release of antidiuretic hormone will be seen. Generally this antidiuretic hormone will be able or synthesized whenever you have the lower volume of extracellular fluid, but in some individual, this will be synthesized inappropriately and non-physiological ADH will be released. So that will causes more water load, and this more water load will be countered by your atrial natriuretic protein peptide, that is ANP and BNP. So these two will be increases your glomerular filtration rate, so that there will be decrease activity of your or inhibition of renin angiotensin mechanism. So this will causes more excretion of sodium. So in this case the volume will be normal, but due to the non-physiological action of your or synthesis of your antidiuretic hormone, there will be more water load in the body. This will be countered by your inhibition of renin angiotensin mechanism as well as by the action of your ANP and BNP. And conditions like lower availability of corticosteroids also will count for the hyponatremia, where the aldosterone concentration will be insufficient to absorb sodium, so the volume will be normal, but more amount of sodium will be deprived through the urine. And in the next cause, that is where the concentration of volume as well as sodium both will be decreases, known as hypovolumetric and as hyponatremia, and this will be purely due to loss of water through the body, and this can be due to the diuretic uses. When we administrate diuretic drugs such as thiazides, they will be causes more excretion of water, and sodium leads to the thirsty or more requirement of water, that is thirst will be increases, and body or skin will become dry mucosa will be seen. Along with that, hypotension will be created, and it will also seen in the vomiting, where you lost the more amount of water and electrolytes, and decrease intake of fluids through the oral. And in the severe diarrhea, especially in the watery diarrhea, you will lose more amount of water as well as electrolytes. And one more condition known as adrenal insufficiency or known as Addison's disease, where you will lose the electrolytes, especially sodium, as well as your water. So there is inefficient adrenal will be produces. This aldosterone is not able to reabsorb sodium as well as water, that will lead us to more excretion of sodium and water. And a next condition that is known as exercise associated hyponatremia. This will be seen more prominently in the athletics or marathon runners, where you will losing the continuous sweating, that will leads to the excretion or losing of water as well as uh, sodium in the form of sweating. Along with that, a few other conditions are also there, like burns, where you will lose the fluids through the intravascular spaces. So that will counts for the your hypovolumetric and hyponatremia. So here in this, the concentration of urine with the sodium will be low. So to understand these three slides, I have given a flow chart. You please go through this, and if you have any doubts, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel at any time. And other causes, and this one is important as a biochemist. This one is important. So we already mentioned the sodium is an important extracellular cation. This is main cation which is responsible to maintain your osmolality in extracellular fluid. Right. But condition like hyperglycemia, when you have the more amount of sodium, sorry, more amount of glucose, that will causes increase osmolality. In response, the body will try to remove more amount of water. So here the sodium will also loses, and that will counts for the hyponatremia. In this, the main cause will be excessive concentration of glucose in the blood, that will be seen in the diabetes mellitus. Or in the severe condition where you have the ketone bodies in blood, they are responsible to maintain your osmolality. So more amount of ketone bodies comes into the action plasma, that will counts for the more excretion of your fluids. So here we are not going in detail with the treatment, just I'm naming the drugs which are useful for the prevention of hyponatremia. Among them, most important drugs will be angiotensin converting enzyme inhibitors, because here your renin angiotensin mechanism is one of the primary culprit which will release more amount of sodium into the urine. So if you are able to inhibit that mechanism, this will be stopped and sodium concentration will be countered. And next one is the NSAIDs जो होता है, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs जो होता है, they are also helps in the countering your sodium concentration. Then vasopressin, oxytocin, they will be useful for the reabsorption of water as well as sodium. And chloropropamide, these are the drugs which will helps in the reabsorption of sodium as well as to maintain the sodium into the normal concentration. And next condition in the hypernatremia, sorry, in the sodium imbalance is known as hypernatremia. So this hypernatremia can be defined as hyper, high concentration, nat stands for sodium, emia stands for in blood. when you have the more concentration of sodium in the blood, that is more than 145 milliequivalents per liter, is known as hypernatremia. And the severe symptoms will occur in the concentration will reaches more than 160 millimoles per liter. And the symptoms will are more or less like your hyponatremia, that is a strong feeling of thirst, general weakness, nausea, and loss of appetite. There is a rapid heart rate, there is an increased heart rate will be seen, and ultimately leads to the increase in BP. In severe condition, it will be seen as confusion, muscle twitching, and bleeding in and around the brain, that is known as cerebral swelling, and comes leads to the death also. And once again, I'm reading the symptoms of your hypernatremia. Hypernatremia is a condition where you have more amount of sodium in the blood, that is more than 145 milliequivalents per liter. And the conditions will be increased feeling of thirst, weakness, nausea, loss of appetite, rapid heart rate, and increased BP. In the severe conditions, you also have the confusion, muscle twitching, and bleeding in and around the brain. So, uh, the general aspect of hypernatremia is two things. One is when you have the more depletion of water, decreased osmolality will causes more amount of sodiums. And second one, as such, when you administrate more amount of sodium intake, like for example taking more amount of salt or more intake of mineralocorticoids, all this will leads to the secondary cause. So let me explain one by one. uh, the first possible condition is decreased osmolality, that is due to the decrease intake of fluids. So that will be seen in the heterogenic anorexia. This heterogenic anorexia is a condition uh, where anorexia is treated wrongly, leads to the low intake of fluids. So that will be a fatal condition where a person will takes low amount of water or fluids. And second thing, transepithelial water loss, that is this will be mainly specially seen in the interstitial fluid, like when we met with the burns, accidents, or heat stroke or hyperventilation. So there you will lose the water of extracellular fluid, so ultimately leads to the more concentration of sodium. And next one is excessive renal loss, where the kidney is unavailable to reabsorb water. So that will be seen in the diabetes insipidus, or else it also seen in the chronic renal failure. And some drugs like NSAIDs, or what you call diuretics, they also causes more excretion of water. And in some cases the water may be loses through your intestine, that is by means of dehydration, vomiting, diarrhea, or hypertonic dehydration. So all this will counts for the low volume of water in the extracellular fluid. So in the simple condition I can explain you, in the water depletion where you are taking low amount of water and you are losing water by the interstitial fluids, and you are losing the water through the kidneys, and you are losing the water through the dehydration by means of vomiting. So all this counts for the lower concentration of extracellular fluid, and indirectly will increases sodium concentration. So you can explain this mechanism as hypovolumetric and hypernatremia. And the second source where you are administrating high concentration of sodium into the extracellular fluid. So when you are preparing diet for the infants and you are mistaking by heterogenic, so when you are the first and the when baby is weaning, you are mistakenly giving more amount of sodium based diet, so that will counts for the sodium overload. And mineralocorticoids excess, so that will also causes the decrease renin. This will be cause for your primary aldosteronism. So here all the possible causes are mentioned in a simple slide, but if you are going in detail, again the condition will be explained in the same way. But for you people, it is not must know thing. So that's why I tried to compile in a single slide. But just remember, the hypernatremia can be classified into hypervolumetric hypernatremia, euvolumetric hypernatremia, and hypovolumetric hypernatremia. But for you people, I'm making it very simple form. These are the possible condition for the hypernatremia. So first and foremost, in the dehydration, when water is predominantly lost, the blood volume of will be increases, and it will leads to the increased concentration of sodium. And next one is in diabetes insipidus, you will see decreased concentration of antidiuretic hormone, so that will unable to reabsorb your water into the body. The kidney is not able to retention the water, so there is indirectly more concentrated volume of urine or concentrated extracellular fluid will be seeing. And next one, in the Cushing's disease also you will be seen. And in the prolonged cortisone therapy on in pregnancy, all this will causes there is more retention of sodium. So the your aldosterone and cortisol will secrete aldosterone, so this aldosterone will causes the more retention of sodium, that will increases the concentration of sodium in the extracellular fluid. And when you have the transfusion with the stored blood, that also counts for the more concentrated extracellular fluid, and sodium concentration will be increases. And as I mentioned, this Cushing disease or cortisone therapy or in pregnancy, all the possible causes will be increased aldosterone only. So in the primary hyperaldosteronism also, this will causes more reabsorption of sodium. And next one is heterostenic possible condition, that is elderly patient or infants who are taking low water, and they are inability to express thirst. For this reason, generally whenever there is a hypovolumetric is seen or hypoosmolarity is seen, immediately our thirst centers will be activated. But due to the many possible many number of conditions, these individuals will not express the thirst condition. So even though the quantity of extracellular fluid will be lower, but still these patients will not able to express the thirst. So this extracellular fluid will become more concentrated, leads to the hypernatremia. And final condition is excessive intake of salt, that also counters for your more amount of sodium into the extracellular fluid. And treatment will be administrating your drugs such like ampicillin, tetracycline, and other anabolic steroids, oral contraceptives, loop diuretics, and osmotic diuretics. So The treatment will be counter to your hyponatremia. Here the diuretics will be administered so that there will be uh, causes more amount of water intention, and it will activate your thirst center so that it will causes more intake of water. And again I'm telling you, we are not going into the mode of action of these drugs, and for you people it is not must to know about the drugs and the treatment. And second most important important electrolyte, so this will follow you throughout your career, that is potassium, as well as sodium and chloride also you have to remember. So the total body content of potassium is 3500 milliequivalents, out of which 75% it is present in the skeletal muscle. And please do remember, the potassium is an important intracellular cation. Sodium is the extracellular cation, whereas your potassium will be intracellular cations. And these two cations, that is intracellular cation by potassium and extracellular cation by sodium, are maintains your osmotic pressure. So normal potassium level in the serum will counts for 3.5 to 5 milliequivalents per liter, whereas the cell contain approximately 150 milliequivalents. Here I am mentioning as 160, so the value will this is may varies from 150 to 160. So don't get confused. So here a point to be noted as a biochemist is, whenever we take the blood sample, you should always have the precaution that you must prevent the hemolysis, because by any chance if the RBC is ruptured, then more amount of your sodium will comes into the serum, so that the concentration will be increases. And requirement, and please do remember, this sodium, potassium, mineral, chloride and magnesium you can apply in the minerals also, because in the minerals we are not went in detail. So the same thing can you explain, can you read out for the minerals also. And the requirement of potassium will be approximately 3 to 4 gram per day, and these sources of potassium will be banana, orange, apple, pineapple, almond, dates, beans, potato. And point to be noted, a tender coconut water is a very good source of potassium. Now again same point, as the sodium and potassium are very important to maintain your osmotic pressure. And here again two spectrums will be seen. One is hypokalemia and next one is hyperkalemia. So in the hyperkalemia, the kalemia stands for kale stands for potassium, emia in the blood, and hyper stands for high. When you have the elevated level of potassium in the serum, that is more than 5.5 milliequivalents per liter, that will be known as hyperkalemia. And to understand the symptoms, you please do remember, potassium is very important to maintain your resting membrane potential of the muscle, right? So the higher concentration will causes more excitability of the muscle, which include your skeletal muscle as well as cardiac muscle and smooth muscles. So when you have the more concentration of potassium, that will causes rapid depolarization, will leads to the flaccid paralysis. The condition is paralysis is nothing but you will have the lower muscle or excitatory muscle tone that will starts with the lower limbs first, and slowly gradually it will be comes to the upper limbs. And bradycardia, obviously, the action of your cardiac muscle will be increases, and if it is not countered, it may leads to the cardiac arrest also. So this will be continuous with the ventricular arrhythmia, and ventricular fibrillation will be seen. So this potassium concentration is highly associated with your events of cardiac activity. When you have the hyperkalemia, the ECG shows elevated T wave and winding of QRS complex. As I mentioned, the concentration of potassium is very important to maintain your resting membrane potential. In higher concentration of sodium, there is increased uh, polarization will be seen, so that will leads to the more stimulant or more action will be seen. So these are the possible condition which you can apply in the cardiac muscle. That in the ECG you will have the elevated T wave following with the widening of QRS complex, and in the PR interval also increases. And here the hyperkalemia, maybe sometime you will be seen in the following fraudulent activity in the following conditions. So when you are uh, drawing a sample, blood sample, so the following conditions may take place that will leads to the pseudo or artificial hyperkalemia. So here one is hemolysis, when you have the breakdown of more RBC, or delayed separation if it is not centrifuged immediately, or it will be kept for the overnight refrigeration, or if you are mixed with the EDTA contamination, or else when you have the clenching or relaxing during the bed sample drawing, so that all will leads to the more loss of or lysis of your cells that will release into the influx of potassium into the extracellular fluid. And generally the hyperkalemia will be actually can be explained in the two mechanisms. Here I present in a different way, but just try to understand. The hyperkalemia can be explained in the two way. One, it will be due to the lacking of internal balance shift. That internal balance shift is purely due to the problem in the sodium potassium pump. So we already knew that potassium is an intracellular cation. This is more present in the cell. So generally we all knew sodium potassium pump will be there, that will counts for the uh, 2 potassium inside of the cell and 3 sodium channels outside of the cell. But if you have the problem in this mechanism, sodium potassium pump, that will leads to the more influx or more amount of potassium will comes into the cell extracellular fluid. That is the one mechanism. And a second mechanism is there is a shifting of external balance. So this external balance may be due to the too much intake of potassium, or maybe due to the excessive administration of intravenous, or maybe due to the renal disavailability. So if the kidney is unavailable to absorb more amount of your uh, uh, potassium or sodium, that will causes the renal mechanism. So here I will follow this mechanism. The true hyperkalemia will be generally seen in the decreased excretion. So this decreased excretion of potassium will be seen in the renal insufficiency and hypoaldosteronism. And second condition is increase intake of potassium, that by direct oral route or by intravenous route. And shifting of potassium out of the cells, I already mentioned that will be done by internal balance shift. And sometimes that may be usually done by few medications which will inhibits the renin angiotensin mechanism, such like your non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs or beta blockers which will be used in the hypertension, or ACE inhibitors, or else AG2 angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, heparin, or potassium sparing diuretics. So all these drugs will causes hyperkalemia due to inhibition of your renin aldosterone mechanism. So the possible condition for the hyperkalemia is there is release of potassium from the cell into the extracellular fluid. So thus will be mainly seen in the two possible condition, very very important, please do remember, that is mostly seen in the two condition. First I am explaining with the insulin deficiency. So we all knew the insulin is responsible for the transferring of your glucose into the cells. But when you are not able to produce sufficient insulin, so the glucose will be present in the extracellular fluid. So this will leads to the more shifting of potassium into the extracellular fluid. So that insulin deficiency or diabetes mellitus may be the cause of your hyperkalemia. And most important cause is metabolic acidosis, not the respiratory but metabolic acidosis, where you will have the pH will be dropping, that is due to the more hydrogen ions. So in the extracellular fluid you will have more amount of hydrogen ions, right? In metabolic acidosis, you already parallelly Bhavesh is explaining about this metabolic acidosis, so let me explain in detail. So in the metabolic acidosis, the blood pH will be lower and more amount of hydrogen ions will be noticed. So these hydrogen ions, to maintain your electrolyte balance, so to counter this, the the cations present in the cells, that is potassium, will be comes into the extracellular fluid, whereas hydrogen will be get into the cell. So due to this, more amount of potassium will comes into the extracellular fluid, that will ultimately leads to the hyperkalemia. And other condition is due to the cell lysis. So in the cell lysis, we already mentioned the conditions may be like hemolytic anemia, where you have the more amount of lysis of RBC will be seen, and rhabdomyolysis. This is a condition where connective tissue or proteins present in the extracellular fluid, especially connective tissue, will undergoes for the excessive breakdown and tumor lysis. So all this will tumor lysis generally you can explain in the mechanism of your cancer therapy. So in chemotherapy you will have the more tumor lysis. So all this condition will leads to the breakdown of cell, so that will increases more potassium into the extracellular fluid, so that will enter into the extracellular fluid, and this will requires the more renal excretion for to maintain your normal potassium levels. And other causes were once again explained. So here there will be absolute problem in the renal excretion. One is obstruction of urinary tract, renal insufficiency or renal failure, deficiency of aldosterone that will be seen in the Addison disease, and severe volume depletion that will be noticed in the heart failure. So in all this condition, the potassium is not able to send to the urine, so that will be more excreted into the extracellular fluid. And second possible condition is entry of potassium into the extracellular space. We already explained about that. That is increased cell lysis that may be seen in the hemolysis or rhabdomyolysis or tumor lysis, or in some condition there is a tissue necrosis will be seen, or burns, or in the chemotherapy. All this will counts for the more cell lysis, so the potassium will comes into the extracellular fluid from the intracellular fluid. The next possible condition is redistribution of potassium to extracellular fluid. As I already mentioned, so the potassium will be present more in the cell, in the metabolic acidosis. There is more amount of hydrogen ions. To counter the equilibrium, the hydrogen ions will be enter into the cell, and potassium will comes into the extracellular fluid. So that will leads to the more potassium in the extracellular fluid. So in the insulin deficiency, so insulin will be low, so the glucose will be present outside more. To counter this, the potassium will be comes into the condition. And that in tissue hypoxia, there will be more amount of your less availability of oxygen. So to counter this, again potassium will be comes into the action. So the same thing you can mention in the transmembrane shift, where the sodium and potassium will be counter for the your equilibrium. And pseudokalemia, that is improper condition but will gives you false condition, that will be gives you more amount of potassium in the blood. That is improper blood collection, thrombocytosis, leukocytosis, and facioitis. All this will be leads to the pseudokalemia. Simple, do remember, the thing is, by excessive intake of potassium and due to the renal failure, and due to the cell lysis, and due to the improper potassium entry into the cell, or the possible condition for your hyperkalemia. So here we have mentioned the slide which is showing all the possible condition. So starting with the acute illness in the kidney injury or adrenal crisis, that is hypoaldosteronism, or diabetic ketoacidosis, metabolic acidosis and rhabdolysis, tumor lysis, syndrome of urinary tract obstruction, all this will causes the hyperkalemia. And you can go this slide when you have the free time. And drugs, once again I'm mentioning you, we are not going to the action of the drugs. Spironolactone, ACE inhibitors, beta blockers, digoxin, all these drugs will be used for the prevention of hyperkalemia. And the second condition, that is known as hypokalemia. So here uh, it is a condition where you will see the lower level of potassium in the plasma. This value will be lower than 3 milliequivalents per liter. And this hypokalemia is more severe, and it will causes increase in mortality and morbidity. And the signs and symptoms will be just like your hyperkalemia only, but once again I'm explaining you, the potassium is important to maintain your time हो गया, to maintain your uh, resting membrane potential. So in the lower potassium levels in the extracellular fluid, it will causes lower stimulus. So you will have the lower activation in the skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, in smooth muscles. So the symptoms will be muscular weakness, fatigueness, muscle cramps, hypotension due to the lower stimulus in the cardiac muscle, decreased reflexes and palpitation, cardiac arrhythmias, and if the condition is more severe, leads to the cardiac arrest. So, and here also you will see the abnormal ECG graph, that is T wave is inverted, whereas in the hyperkalemia the T wave is sharp rise will be seen, and ST segment is raised. There you will have the QRS segment is prolonged with the AV block. And the possible conditions for your hypokalemia will be inadequate intake, that is anorexia, dementia, starvation, or total prevention of nutrition. Will all this will leads to the lower intake of sodium, or maybe due to the abnormal losses, that is due to the administration of diuretics, laxative, or corticosteroids. So this will causes more amount of rapid loss of potassium into the urine, or maybe due to the gastrointestinal losses, especially in the case of your diarrhea, or due to the acid vomitings, you will loses the potassium into the extracellular fluid, and maybe due to the renal losses, that is in the osmotic diuresis by excessive releasing of mineralocorticoids, or else in the type 1 and type 2 tubular renal tubular acidosis, or if you have the more intake of water, all this will leads to the loss of potassium into the urine. And dialysis as well as hypomagnesemia, these two are the other possible condition for the abnormal losses of your potassium. So the same will be applied in the transcellular shift, like if you're treating with the insulin, especially in the hyperinsulin in the type 2 diabetic patient, when you treat with a more amount of insulin, so that will causes more loss or more enter of potassium into the intracellular fluid, that will leads to the hypokalemia. Or some drugs like xanthines or ampicillins, verapicills, all this will causes the transcellular shifting of your potassium from extracellular fluid to the intracellular fluid. And point to remember, alkalosis will causes hypokalemia. In the acidosis, you have seen with the hyperkalemia. In the alkalosis, you will seen with the hypokalemia. And sometimes you may have the false hypokalemia, that will be due to the extreme leukocytosis or delayed sample analysis, that also leads to your hypokalemia. So the same thing here I am explaining. Uh, the true hypokalemia is due to the increased excretion, decreased intake, and shifting of potassium into the cells. The causes of increased renal excretion will be Cushing syndrome, hyperaldosteronism, hyperrenism, more amount of renal artery stenism, hypomagnesia, renal tubular acidosis. This all will counter for the more excretion of potassium into the urine. And shifting may be due to the alkalosis, insulin therapy, thyrotoxic periodic paralysis, or hypokalemic periodic paralysis will leads to the hypokalemia. In gastrointestinal losses, diarrhea, vomiting, aspiration, deficient intake or low intake of potassium diet, malabsorption, and pyloric obstruction, all this will leads for the hypokalemia. and drugs will be used for this mechanism will be insulin, salbutamides, osmotic diuretics and thiazides and corticoids all will be useful to prevent your hypokalemia. So this will completes your important electrolytes sodium and potassium. In the next class, we will discuss about the remaining electrolytes as well as we will go for the new topic about AIDS. A control